Okay, BB7A is the same as the PRYA, but this is just gonna be a recase. After going through, jumping all the hoops of finding the bearing that got broken during the disassembly, had a hell of a time finding that bearing. I can tell you where to find it now. I can tell you not to do it the way that they say to do it, and not to pull this out the way that they show that you can do it, because you will break this. I don't know if it'll show up on camera, but it is cracked. So the way I finally ended up getting this thing apart, let's see, what did I do with the thing? I went down to O'Reilly's and I got this, and I used this portion of it. Right here. And I used the snap-on pilot bearing remover, and what I did, this doesn't come with it. I put this on there so this thing doesn't fall off all the time, but this is what I used to make this work also. So you take that off. Let's see, how did I do this? You want this back on there. Put the washer on here so you don't tear this up. I would also get something on here, like maybe a pair of vice grips or something to hold this, hose clamp, anything to keep it from spreading out, because once you start putting some pressure on this thing, these legs want to spread out. So then just put this on there, and you're going to be grabbing this bearing right here, right up underneath these rollers right here. Alright, just like so. And this is going to be sitting on here. You're going to want to put this thing something like that right there. And you're going to screw this down till it tightens up. And then I just used a punch or a screwdriver, whatever we want to use, and turn that. And let me tell you, it's got some pressure on it, so it will come out. But that's how I did that. So that should help you out there. And put this away later. Need my bearing back. All right. So you have an O-ring there, an O-ring there, and your tube goes on here. And if you notice the shape, it's flat and then it's got a rounded edge. If you look down in there, it's got a flat rounded edge over here. So I'm going to take the O-rings off just to make this easier on me. Notice your flats have to line up on there. And it just sits down inside there. Lube that up really well, get that down in there. Then your bearing goes on top of that. Then your flats have to go in those slots down there. It will only line up one way. So here again you got 3 O-rings, and lube those up really well. And just to make this easier on me, you want to make sure it's all lined up before you go and try to push it in by hand. Then the bearing goes with this groove up. Got an oil slinger here. You do not need to take this bearing out, and this side faces up. You have an oil slinger here. You don't need to take this bearing out. It goes there. This bearing goes here. You don't need to take it out. This oil slinger here and the bearing, you don't need to take it out. You have oil slinger here. The tab goes right there. And the race for the diff, you don't need to take it out unless it's bad. You got your drain plug over here. It does have a washer on it. It's 3/8 square. You can change that washer, you change your seal. We have our magnet, and this side faces here, and it sits in that little bracket just like that. And we have our retainer for our race. Let's see how this was in there. Yeah, just like that. 10 millimeters for that. I don't remember what the torque specs are off the top of my head. I'll get all that for you. I remember something like 89 inch-pounds. I may be wrong there. Bleed screw. You don't need to take them out. You do need to make sure that they're free. 5 millimeter Allens, if you want to take those out. Don't need to. Alright, dowel pin here, and there's another one over here that's stuck in the other case. I'll get it out. And that's it for this side. Let me get that in and we'll be back. Alright, there's your bearing that goes in the front. As always, make sure it's all the way down and just stake it in place like I do all my Hondas. And then make sure that your front seal has got the lines going the right direction, and if it has an arrow, the arrow's going the same direction. Here's the drain plug I was talking about. Alright, let me get the valve body and we'll go through the valve body. Okay, so the valve body is the same. Or, let me change that. These valves are measured the same so far. The number is different. This is HPPG 13 RT4 number 5-1 on this one. The PYRA was a different number, but all the valves, all the springs measure the same. So the valve goes in with hollow end out. Spring. And the retainer. I don't really care, but you do need to make sure that the spring is centered. I don't care because it's not going into the vehicle. Hollow end out. Spring. End plug. Now, I have been told that, or let me rephrase that. On Sonax's website, it says that those end plugs do not fit the 6 speeds, but they measure the same to me. I think that they would work, but I don't like being a guinea pig, so somebody give it a shot and let me know. Hollow end out, spring, in plug, retainer, hollow end out, spring, in plug, retainer, hollow end up, spring, and retainer. Make sure it's centered again. Hollow end up, spring, in plug, and retainer. Alright, I'm going to go through all the valve bodies first, then we'll assemble it all onto the case. Okay, manual valve body, same number, RT4. There's the PYRA, same springs, same accumulator. Got an O-ring on it, so be sure and replace that. When you put your snap ring in, make sure the opening is away from the opening. Okay. And I don't remember where the bolts went right off, but we'll get them when we get there. Alright, on this part of the valve body, I don't remember what they call this thing, but there is a check valve in here. Just don't try to take it out, but if that check valve falls out of there, you're supposed to replace this. Servo body, same number, RT4. Valve hollow end out. Spring. And retainer. Make sure that's centered up. Valve hollow end out. Spring. In plug. I didn't mention it, but you do need to make sure your end plugs are all the way back against the retainer is all the way back against the body, that to the outside. You don't want it in. Your valve may not stroke if it's not in a proper position. Spring, hollow end in. In plug, and retainer, valve stem out. Got the middle spring, inner spring, and outer spring. What did I do with my bolt? Yep, oh, it's still in there. So you want the tip of this bolt right there to be in that slot. So do not use an impact. Do not use a wrench. You want to make sure and push that down by hand and screw this in by hand, and then it's in the right proper position before you tighten it down. sure it's all the way down. Outer and inner spring, O-ring on here, so change that. Opening away from the opening again. O-ring on your servo. The detents need to go against the detent ball. And our tube goes right there. Alright, let me change the camera angles. We'll put the valve body on. Alright, when you put your pump gears in here, you're going to want to check your clearance, and you have to put them in and put them the way they're supposed to be with the pin. And you're going to be checking your clearance here and your face clearance here. All the specs will be on the Patreon side. Alright, we got dowel pin, dowel pin. Separator plate, pin, ID marked down, our drive gear. Alright, our valve body can go on. And let's see here. Alright, I want to measure them. They're all the same except for that long one. This one is inch 800. The rest of them are inch 390. You have two check balls. They are 312, I think. 215. And one goes there, one goes there. And we got their two dowel pins. We got two dowel pins. Dowel pin there. Bleeder. Make sure it's free. Alright. Separator plate. Goes this way, and separator plate goes that way. This little dude, let's see, goes in there that way. Two 10 millimeters, the black, and they have a shoulder on them. Inch 394. And let's see here. Let's go on here. Find out where our bolts go. Two of these have to hold a baffle in. I think it's two of them. And then We also got our filter that goes on there. There. I think one of these is in the wrong spot. Let's find out where. Right. We have a dowel pin that goes, oop, not there. Right there. And we got a housing, and we got 3 O-rings on our stator. Millimeter bolts for that. Right. Our manual valve body. There we go. Alright, yes, we'll start over here. Inch 187, 2-inch 186, 1-inch 187, 2-inch 184, 3-inch 770, same, 4-inch 564. These 312 or 412s are all the same. There are only 12s in there. 3-inch 235, 2-inch 182. 3-inch 380, 2-inch 970, 2-inch 970, same, 3-inch 765, and 3-inch 770. And I forgot about the stop. It goes right there. Let's see how much of this we can get on camera. We have our first difference is this differential. So you have the side gear washers, and this side gear goes down here. We have pinions, and their washers. They go on here, and our slots are going to face up. And then this notch facing up, this notch facing down. Where's the other spider gear? Now the other side gear bearing washer facing up, and I would recommend that you mark your differential before you take it apart and put everything back the way it was. 2 Phillips screws here. Probably going to need an impact driver to get these started off. I don't care about how tight they are because I'm just going back as a core. And then we have the ID marks facing up. It's a tooth less, and this one has 2 ID marks. These are left-handed bolts. And I'll get you the torque specs for that. I'm not going to press this off because it's just too much work. I don't need to do. Everything's the same with the exception of the tooth count. It's a 17 tooth, the PYRA is 16 tooth. The sprag element goes with the lip down. Let's see if we can get this out of here. Again, without too much trouble. It really does not want to come out of there. There is a lip on it, on the gear, that it kind of pops into. Well, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. There is a lip on it, and the lip faces down. So keep that in mind. When you get this on there, it's going to turn counterclockwise and lock clockwise. Our gear goes on with this side down. The shim goes on top. Nope. We gotta go back. We forgot our bearing. Yeah, bearing goes in there. Collar goes on top of that, and our selective shim goes there. Okay, first gear. We have this bearing here. Goes on right there, that direction. You might want to put some grease on that to kind of hold it in place. You have O-ring here, 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 and here. Sealing rings here. They're Z locks, so they go together. Let's see if we can get one off of there without screwing it up. I guess it really doesn't matter since we're not putting this in a vehicle. And I'm gonna get it off of there. See if I can do it without breaking it. And they go together just like so. Okay, you have an O-ring here, O-ring here. Make sure your flapper valve is working properly. You have a dished ring here that will stay on here if you just leave it on there. And it goes dished down. have a return spring, a retainer, and snap ring. We'll always want the short end of the taper up, not like that. I want it like that, and put it in between those 2 or 3 recesses. We don't want it on top of one. We want it over here somewhere like that. If you have a ridge in your steels like most Hondas do, if your clearance comes out okay, you can probably just buff that off. Otherwise, you're probably looking for a used unit to get you some steels, because so far there's no steels available for these things. So alternate steels and clutches up. And your snap. We have our bearing and race. Make sure the race is facing the same way it was before. We have this bearing. We have our gear. We have the bearing and race. Make sure the race is facing the same way as it was before. And here we go. And then the snap ring for that. Okay, lube up your O-rings. And snap ring, short end of the taper up. Our bearing, this gear, this side up, this gear, this side down, and you're going to have to press that on. Second clutch goes with the side with the splines. O-ring, check your flapper valve. Return spring, retainer, short end of the taper up, away from the notches. Cushion plate, dish down, alternate steels and clutches up. The gear is different from the PYRA. I forget how many teeth it was that it had. PYRA was 30 teeth, this one's 31. I got bearing and race. Yep, wrong gear. Alright, we have bearing, collar. Gear is the same as a PYRA. Got a bearing here. That's going to go onto there. Have O-ring, check your flapper valve. Return spring, retainer, short end of the taper up, away from the notches. Alright, cushion plate, dish it down, alternate stills and clutches. Idler gear, this side up. It's the same as the PYRA. You may have to press this on, and the bearing goes on. Then our gear goes on this way. We have a bearing, race, and collar. That's going to have to be pressed on off as well. Let me get that pressed on. I'll be back. Alright, drum goes on. Splined in up. Collar with the two bearings on it, and the gear, and the bearing. This bearing and nut goes on the top, but we're not going to put that on right now. We need to leave this off to get the transmission together. Idler shaft is the same. I'm not going to press it off. It does press off. You got two half moon keys. You go there. You got the retainer, cupped end down, short end of the taper up. And then we have a bearing and a race back here. Fourth clutch, you have an O-ring, dish cushion plate, snaps in place, dish down again. You'd want to lube this up if you're rebuilding it. If it don't go in, I'm just going to pull the O-rings off. There we go. Return spring, a retainer, short end of the taper down again. Alternate stills and clutches up. on the back of your shaft here is a tube with 2 O-rings. Short end of the taper up on our snap ring. Make sure you're all the way in that groove. Z-lock sealing ring here and here. O-ring, O-ring there. Let's see, we got bearing, bearing, gear, bearing, race, this side down. Yep, actually we're going the wrong direction. Guess we need to be going the right direction. Would help. Now we do have a notch here and a notch in our ring. And we have 2 half-moon keys. You go in there. You have a retainer. Recess down. And snap ring short end of the taper up. Okay, lube up your O-rings. And snap ring short end of the taper up. Our bearing, this gear, this side up, this gear, this side down, and you're going to have to press that on. Side with the splines is 3rd gear. O-ring, O-ring, check your flapper valve. You would want to lube this up again if you was building it. Return spring, retainer, short end of the taper up away from the notches. Cushion plate with the dish down. Alternate stills and clutches. Pressure plate. Snap ring. 6th clutch. O-ring, O-ring, check your flapper valve, lube up your seals again. return spring. Retainer, short end of the taper up, away from the notches. Cushion plate just down. Alternate steels and clutches up. Pressure plate and snap ring. I'm not going to take this all the way apart. It does press off. There's 4 sealing rings. Yes, I know there's only 3 on here. This one broke. Here's the snap ring that holds this bearing on if you need to change that. So 4 sealing rings, 3 O-rings. Lube all that up. Spline's facing this way on the drum. Collar with bearing and bearing. Come on. I had to go press that on. Bearing, gear, and bearing. These were all the same as the PYRA. Alright, let me get the camera set up and we'll start putting this in the case. Okay, put your differential in. Put your 3rd shaft in. Make sure your bearing is in. Make sure your linkage is in that. And then put your detent on. This side up. And then hook your spring into that notch right there. See if I can do this away from me. Now, put your park pole on. 12 millimeters on that. I'll get you the torque specs for that. Since I don't care, I'm just going to tighten it down. You might want to pull your gear off of here and your collar and sleeve, collar and shim off of this one. Makes it easier to grab a hold of. These two have to go in at the same time, your counter shaft and your secondary shaft. And it is a little bit on the heavy side. And Put your gear and collar back on. You can put your idler shaft in, make sure your bearing and race is on there. Put your main shaft in. And you're going to need to bring your case up because your case is going to push against it. And if you don't do that and you go ahead and tighten everything down, you're going to end up with a noise. So make sure that your case is up. So I'm just going to show you how to do it. I got to move this around some before I put the case halves in. Just put something underneath there so that drops down. You have your two tubes. They have O-rings on each end. Lube those up. And put those on. You have this baffle. It needs to go on. And let me get this underneath there so that it drops back down. Here we go. Short black one over here. Long black one here. Wait. Long black one there. Long gold one here. 10 millimeters for all of that. And our tube goes in there. And it's 10 millimeter is 923 thousandths. Your filter. And two 10 millimeter bolts for that. So we can go ahead and measure them. Inch 193. Not that that matters. All right. We got our gear that goes on here. Alright, this bearing goes on here, and our nut, 12 millimeter Allen. Alright, we have our collar and our fork. Our bolt and our lock. Lock sits right up there. and bend your lock over to lock your bolt in place. Have our collar and bearing and our gear. Bearing and bolt. This is 6mm. $8mm. So pressure bearing on, tighten that down, pressure bearing on, tighten that down. We'll get the center case, and we'll get, there's a dowel pin that goes here. We'll see if we can get it out of the case and put it here. You would put a gasket on there, and we'll put our center case on. Dowel pin did not want to come out. I tried on the last one to get this bearing to come out. It flat did not want to come out. I wasn't going to try it again. That one will come out. This is your adjustment shim. I'll show you how to measure it on the Patreon side. If you didn't change anything, it shouldn't have changed anything. It goes in there just like that. This snap ring goes in here. You have to release this snap ring in order to get the case to go all the way down. When you read the book, it tells you to release the snap rings for these. They don't do you any good, so don't release them. Take the case off with them in there. And the snap ring goes here. And the snap ring goes here. It might be easier to put it in from the other side. I think the bearings are a little bit easier to go from this side and then spread them open and tap them in until they snap into place. Groove faces forward. Groove faces forward. These actually went in pretty easy. And we have a shim for the diff, the oil slinger, and the race. Let me get that put in, and then your axle seal also for this side. You get all that put in, and then we'll drop the case half on there. Reverse idler goes on here. I would not try to take that apart. 14mm for that. I'll get you the torque specs for that. Alright, this camera is probably going to have to be pushed out the way because it's going to be in the way. I'm trying to get this case half on. see how it goes. Now, you would also want to put your lever seal in and lube it up before you put your case in. Open up your snap ring. See if we can get it a little bit further down. Move our idler gear into position. Come on now. Quit being difficult. Yeah, all it took was moving the camera out of the way and this thing falls down. You'd be surprised how many times turning off the camera will make something go properly. Alright, lift that bearing up into place till it snaps in place. X faces up on your washers. Make sure they're splined onto the shaft. And I don't remember what these were, so let's find out what they were. 41 millimeter, and I believe this one's left-handed. No, this one's right-handed. And this is a 12.36 millimeter, and it's left-handed. I'll get you the torque specs for that. start with 12 millimeters, and they start right back here. 1 inch 860. Same. 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 You got a bracket here. This one is 2 inch 842. 2 inch 440. Same. 1 inch 858. 1 inch 863. 2 inch 450. 1 inch 855. Same. 2 inch 450. 3 inch 235. And the last one is 2 inch 445. And we start with 14 millimeters. They are 1 inch 945. 4 inch 95 thousandths. 1 inch 940. 2 inch 333. Same. 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 3 inch 100. Where was we? I think right here. 3 inch 505. 3 inch 100. 4 inch 95. 1 inch 937. Same. And that's it. Alright, I'll get you the torque specs for that. O-ring, lube that up. Tube has to go in that hole right there. O-ring. 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 And some of these have a bracket like the PYRA did. That goes on out here, and the external filter goes on there. Alright, all of these are the same length bolts, and we also have an O-ring on our temp sensor. And they are 101 inch 12 thousandths. have our linkage. And we have another bolt like that in our lock. Man, my mind's just gone blank. Make sure the lock part of it is facing over here. I think that's where it goes. Let me double check here. Nope, it goes on the side, I believe. No, it won't go there, so it has to go here. Surely don't look right. Yeah, I think I got the alright, when you go to line up your neutral switch, put it in neutral, of course, and get you something. You can use a feeler gauge, you can use whatever you want. You're going to want to line that up right there, just like so. And here are the two bolts for that. They are 1" 1/48. Filler tube. There is an O-ring on that, so lube it up. $775 thousandths. When you do your transmission, odds are very high that you're going to be putting a new solenoid assembly on it. They're horrible. It will come entirely like this. Do make sure there are screens on the back side of these tubes. They do face down and they do face a certain direction, so you might want to look at this. And that's how they face. Lube them all up and put that in place. There are two dowel pins that line that up. And all of the bolts are 1" 390. vent cap. Okay, your speed sensors are both the same, but I would mark them and put them in the same spot that they came out of. There's an O-ring on each one of them. The solenoid has 3 O-rings on it. The pressure sensors are all the same, but I would mark them again, put them in the spot that they came out of. This one goes down here. And I believe it was a 7/8 wrench to tighten these down. And we have, I think, this 775 here. And the other two are 1" 12, I believe. And I'm going to start. And these two go over here. Right here. And right here. And then we are done with the unit. And we will see you next one.